Going to focus on the last two aspects, really. So the summative assessment, the final assessment, which then leads on to learner achievement. So we've moved around and covered the tasks here for sampling, standardization, mocks and learner registration, and now we're going to look at final assessment and end of course moderation. So let me stop sharing that. So we've got a quiz. So again, it's fingers on keyboards, not on buzzers, and I'm going to read the questions out, and my glamorous assistant Jess is going to sort out who is the fastest. I think it was Rose and Athena are in the lead at the moment. So let's see. Okay, are we ready? Question number one then. You need to refer back to your pre-conference slides for this, potentially. We will do. For level 1 functional skills maths, which of the two assessment papers has to be done first? For level 1 functional skills maths, which of the two assessment papers has to be done first? Okay, then on to number 2. We're fast and furious. What can remote assessment be used for? So what can you remotely assess? Number 3. Can you give 2 examples of papers which are externally marked? So this is testing your ability to go back and look at the slides. Can you give 2 examples of papers which are externally marked? Okay. Number 4. How many assessments do functional skills learners take during the course? How many assessments do they take?
Functional skills.
Functional skills English, sorry. How many assessments do functional skills English learners take during the course? Apologies. And then number 5. How many assessments do ESOL learners take during a course?
Which ESOL mode?
You're answering the question. Number 6. Can you give 2 examples of papers which are internally marked? Can you imagine if this ever appeared on University Challenge, or what kind of program would this be? Number 7, which qualifications can be assessed through remote invigilation? And number 8, if ESOL learners achieve all 3 awards, but at different levels, do they gain the higher or the lower of these at certification? If ESOL learners achieve all 3 awards, but at different levels, do they gain the higher or the lower of these at certification? Number 9, how much time is allowed for the functional skills English reading assessment? And number 10, how much time is allowed for the level 1 ESOL speaking and listening assessment? Okay, Jess has been thrown out of Zoom. We don't know why, so she will go back in and she will check.
Can you say the last one again, please, Annabelle?
I can say the last one again, if I can find it. How much time is allowed for the level 1 ESOL speaking and listening assessment?
I can't find it.
It should be there.
Slide 13.
It should be there.
I'm too far ahead.
See? Next time I ask you, Rose, you're going to be like that with all of them.
Competitive, moi.
Just a touch. So, as Jess sorts out the scores on the doors, we have got some answers for you. So, number 1, non-calculator. Number 2, drum roll please, because this has changed so many times because of City and Guilds sending us mixed information. Remote assessment can be used for functional skills, English speaking and listening and communication for this week, yes, all levels, and for ESOL speaking and listening at all levels.
Can you confirm remote assessment, please?
Can I?
Confirm remote assessment, what is that?
So remote assessment is where your learners are being assessed by you online, basically. You're not all in the same room.
Okay, thank you.
So before you all take to the EAF forms to think, right, we'll do everything through remote assessment, we are going to talk about this in a moment in terms of making sure that you are very clear as to what's involved in all of that. Number 3, 2 examples of papers which are externally marked. Well, there's a whole selection that you can have there. You could have had level 1 reading for functional skills, level 2 maths paper, etc. How many assessments do functional skills English learners take during the course? They take 3. 1 assessment per course for ESOL because they're award-based courses. 2 examples of papers which are internally marked. That can be entry 2, functional skills, reading. It could be as well speaking and listening paper at entry level, or indeed at level 1 or level 2. Which qualifications can be assessed through remote invigilation? So that's where learners go onto a platform, basically an online platform, where they conduct the assessment with a City and Guilds invigilator. That's functional skills, English, reading and writing, level 1 and level 2, and functional skills, maths, level 1 and level 2 only. If ESOL learners achieve all 3 awards, they get the higher or the lower, they get the lower. So that's an important one to remember. And then you've got the timings. Okay. So how did we get on? How did people do? Athene is the winner in terms of speed and correct answers, importantly.
Thank you.
Oh, Rose. She won't like that. She
Fall
won't
from
like
grace,
that.
big time.
She'll be back.
Yeah, I think I really showed my weakness on the detail there.
Well, I'm not saying anything, Rose.
I have been messaging you 2 every single day with every one of these questions. So
there you go. We designed this quiz specifically with Rose in mind.
Now I've got my PowerPoint notes. I'm good to go.
There you go. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Jess now, who is going to take you through some FAQs for final assessments.
Right. Frequently asked questions. They are asked fairly frequently, so we've collated as many as we can think of, and there might be some more. So I'm just going to go through each of these questions. Feel free to shout out an answer. So question number 1, why can't we store exam papers at a tutor's home address? Would anyone like to answer that one?
It's not allowed by City and Guilds requirement.
It's not allowed. Oh, where is it?
I think
Okay.
I'd like to sneak a peek at the paper for future use. Not for cheating in that exam, but just to see what's covered.
Yeah, it's Athena's absolutely right. It's against the requirements outlined by City and Guilds and the JCQ, the Joint Council for Qualifications. How do you decide? There seems to be a lot of different options for assessment. How do I decide what's best for my learners? What would you refer to? How would you decide what's best for your learners?
Are you talking about remote or face-to-face? Is that what
Well,
that
they're
question
two of the
means?
options. Yeah.
They need to be assessed on the learning outcomes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the different options for the assessments, but in we have referred to the conference pack quite a lot, but there is a table in there which gives you every available option for assessment. Be guided by this, and I think that may not reflect the change we've just mentioned about. It does, no, it does have the most up-to-date guidance in there, right? Fantastic. How do I register learners for an assessment?
Fill in your AAF form.
Fill in your EAF form, and it does. We know we've spoken about it. It does have an awful lot of information on there. It has an awful lot of guidance as well. It should have all the guidance you need. Some areas some people will have to fill in, and some other people have to fill in. But that's the way to register your learners. What does it mean if we do not follow guidance for storing exam papers?
We might not meet the requirements and not pass the Ofsted visit.
Will we lose
Yeah.
our status as a?
Yes,
Yeah.
and also losing funding.
Losing funding, we won't ultimately be able to run the qualification. We have mentioned that City and Guilds are auditing assessments a lot now as well. So we need to make sure we are complying with that. When do I need an invigilator or an interlocutor?
Invigilator level 1 and level 2 reading and writing, and interlocutor for speaking and listening exams at all levels.
Yeah. And maths, yes. So invigilators are needed for externally marked assessments. We've touched on this before. They shouldn't have a background in teaching the subject. Interlocutors for ESOL speaking and listening, and the speaking, listening, communication, full guidance available. We have the PowerPoint slides which have been distributed. We can distribute again. What must we have in place before we set up an accredited EME course?
I think you're referring to an IQA here.
You think?
I think so.
Well, among other things, yes, there's a named IQA, a named one, not someone that's called question mark or guest or dot, although dot could be a IQA. A suitable venue, storage and resources for the assessment. Staff must have had sight of the invigilated training and the interlocutor information. So it's about pre-planning again when you set up the assessment, planning how it's going to, when you set up the course, planning how the assessment is going to actually run, and do you have the resources in place to comply with the requirements. And finally, can I use my phone to record the speaking and listening assessments?
No.
It's against
No.
it doesn't comply with GDPR.
No, it's GDPR, that's right. Regions should have digital recorders available for the speaking and listening assessments. Mobile phones and laptops should not be used. So that's a discussion that needs to be had in regions. If they're not available, they need to be made available. So
May I ask a question about storing of all of the assessments?
storing the assessments, yeah.
Yes. Is it I'm assuming in the JCQ it'll have the guidelines and requirements for that, but just out of interest, I'm remote, my students are remote, we don't have a base. The only base I have is in Exeter and Bristol, but I'm in Bournemouth. So if I had a safe in my house, I'm not necessarily going to screw it into the ground. So is there a way around that?
You couldn't have a safe in your, well, you couldn't store it in your house, whether it was in a safe
Or not?
No, it can't be. It can't be in a house. It has to be in the named venue or regional office. These are on the screen now. The requirements
Thank
for
you.
for lockable storage, but yeah, in terms of the actual address, it can't be a home address.
Even though I'm not the tutor. Oh, okay. It's got to be registered centre's
It has
address.
to be a
Yeah.
registered address.
Yeah.
So
I'll read
regional
this.
office or venue address. We did look into, because this has been going on for some weeks, the discussions, we did look into whether we could have the option of postal boxes or lockable, you know, the lockable sort of Amazon lockers that you get, and that's been rejected, unfortunately.
It is a
So
bit of an issue really though, because I
It's an
mean,
issue.
Manchester's lucky in that we've got a main office, but even so, it requires me picking up those assessments and delivering them to the tutor just before the exam. But I'm only one person and we have loads of exams all the time. And it is really, really difficult.
Excuse me, Jess, does this apply to all levels?
Yes.
So even lower level ESOL?
Yeah. For exam papers, yeah, assessment papers. So it's really important to read through the guidance, and I think what we're going to do is set up individual conversations via your quality leads to make sure that we've got a strategy in place for each region to deal with this. Because we could really come a cropper here, and some of you on the call have already been involved in some exam audits that I'm going to come on and talk about shortly, and that's where they're actually looking at how we are storing papers, the journey that the papers go on, and how obviously we're conducting the assessment. Elizabeth's got her hand up.
Oh, yes. Why can't we use WEA laptops to record? I find that I just find those little tiny digital things impossible and too difficult for me.
We're gonna come back to people on that. We've been told that people can't, but we will come back with a definitive answer on that, because I know that some people have got WEA laptops and some people haven't. So we will come back to people on that.
Thank you.
Excuse me, surely if we're using remote invigilation and Zoom, then it could be on the laptop anyway.
Remote assessment.
Yeah.
For speaking and listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were told
on
to.
Zoom and it goes to the cloud.
That's right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I can't hear you, Jess, if you're...
Sorry, I'm come a bit closer. I've put on this slide the guidance outlined by City and Guilds in terms of what they require for the storage, and also at the bottom there's the JCQ as well. So we're not just wanting to, you know, stress that we're not just being difficult, and we are aware that it's really tricky for some regions, and the logistics of getting papers to the right place at the right time when it feels like we're just putting up barriers.
May I ask a question, please, Jess, around this? Because previously, because we do have a tiny office in Portsmouth and an office in Southampton, and Annabelle will know, we printed our own papers. So it just mitigated quite a lot of this, because we've got the lockable storage on site, obviously. We don't have to, the only issue is us transporting to, because Liz Joyner sits in Portsmouth and does my IQA, I sit in Southampton, and I'm there every week, but it means that I'd have to do it in situ. Is that possible for people to do?
To print in, yes, you can print in regional office. Yeah,
It just makes it, yeah, because that's what, yeah, the entry levels obviously, because the rest is what do you call it, posted.
That's an option on the EAF. You would select that on the EAF, so you can print
that's what I thought.
in region, and then you've got your lockable storage, so that's ideal. You print it out, you put it in the storage, and you take it to the exam on the day. Perfect. Yeah. Lorraine, have your hand up.
Yeah, we were told on a regional meeting that we could have exams sent to the venue, providing they've got a locked cupboard. Is that
okay.
correct?
Yeah, we can do that. It's just it has to be not in a private residence, doesn't it? It's not in a house. Tutors'
But if
house
it's
or
a
staff
secure
member's house.
office where students can't enter and they've got a cabinet that locks, we can have them there.
Yeah, that's again where it goes back to the conversation that we need to have with each region, because if you're going down that road, that's fine, but we need to make sure that the partners that you're doing with that are really clear about that lockable storage and who's in and out of that room, and is that lockable storage just open at various points and people are walking in and out. So that's where we need to have these regional conversations, I think. Because
it is really proving impossible at the moment. I just can't be everywhere at once. Sometimes I have three exams at the same time and I can't be in 3 different places.
But we've been playing fast and loose with this for too long. We really have. We shouldn't be doing it. It's maladministration what we're doing here.
Can we use couriers?
Sorry?
Can we use couriers?
Couriers?
Yeah, like someone was saying they can't be in 3 places at once. Could we use couriers?
I think I would actually need to check, because again, it's about the lockable case and the transport of that paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we could have some sort of agreement for venues to sign, say they're happy to take the exams in and keep them safe, that would really help, wouldn't it?
But again, it's about complying with the storage requirements.
But then that could state what those compliances are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because we're going to have to work a way around as we do more and more and more.
Definitely.
We need a workaround.
Can we take question from Rose and then one from Lisa? Or Elizabeth's got her hand up again, and then we are going to need to move on. As I say, we are going to have these conversations with each region.
Oh, I can't have my hand.
It's just we've been talking a lot about the beginning of the exam process and lockable cupboards. What happens on internally marked papers when you've got to bring papers back and mark them and upload them to Canvas? What are there storage requirements at that end of the process, or is the storage requirement very much at the beginning of the process?
Because then what we're going to talk about in a moment, what Jess is going to go through, is then what happens after.
Okay.
Take them home to mark them. So that requirement, not the live unseen exam at that point. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to move on. Oh, Lisa, sorry, I beg your
No, it's
pardon.
all right. I don't mind. My understanding was that you could collect them 24 hours before the exam. Am I wrong about that?
But then to keep them where in your house?
If you're collecting them 24 hours before the exam, I suppose you would have to keep them at your house, wouldn't you?
No, you can't. No.
Right.
No.
Okay.
Not even if they're in that lockable case or carrier. No, because it has to be a storage unit. Sorry, that's what you're saying, isn't it?
It does seem strict, and I know it's been done many different ways.
You probably haven't done it right in the first place, is probably the case.
I think that's the case, yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's unlearning all of the things that we've done as our workarounds and our fixes.
I was going to say, all those convenient workarounds that work so differently in different regions that, yeah, we are having to forget about those.
So Jess, if exams have to be transported from one office to another, say the other office hasn't got the facility to store them, and then they're printed in one office and they have to be transported to the other, say they're in a lockable suitcase, does that have to be done on the day of the exam?
Just transporting between offices? No, that wouldn't, would it? If for example, it was printed in one office and then transported to another, it could then wait in that second office in the lockable storage until the day of the exam.
Okay.
Yeah, but both places need the lockable storage.
Well, not necessarily the printing if you're standing there and printing it out and then just taking it.
But I think Irma was talking about printing it putting it in a lockable case,
Yeah.
taking it to a venue. If she's going to leave it at that venue, am I right, Emma? That venue also needs lockable
Yeah,
storage.
which we do, Rose.
Yeah.
We have lockable at both places.
Yeah,
so
if there's
it's,
lockable
yeah.
storage, that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna have to move on. We don't run out of time. So this slide is taken from another document, which is all about exam compliance. So it's really outlining what we're talking about now. It's a bit, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to read that. Some of the text is a little small. It just shows a slightly different journey to the internally marked assessments and the externally marked papers. So if I just ask you to look at the left-hand side one, it starts at the top with ordering the exam papers from the accreditation team. And then those arrows just follow exactly where those papers should be going. So you will, I don't know if I need to read all these out because you are going to receive these slides, but the difference here is in the externally marked one, straight after the exam, those papers are sent directly back to City and Guilds. And if they're not posted immediately, then yes, they would have to be stored securely until they're posted back. So referring back to Rosie's question about after the exam, that's the difference. So internally marked ones, after the exam, the papers are marked and scanned up to Canvas by the tutor or the ESA or whoever's in charge of that scanning. And then they'll be available for sampling. Internally, externally marked assessment papers, slightly different journeys. So that'll be something to read through a little later to get that clear. I'm just going to move to the next slide of what's allowed inside the assessment. So learners do get access to dictionaries as a matter of course in the ESOL and English. Obviously, they're allowed to take pens, dictionaries. What I haven't put in here, is they are allowed to take food and drink into an exam, but only if they are in an unmarked, clear container. That's something I need to add to that. I've just realised that now. And in the assessment room, yes.
Yes, sorry, could we just go back to the dictionaries? Do you remember my question last week about bilingual dictionaries?
Yeah, that's coming up on another slide.
Okay, I'll shut up.
All the details.
Can I ask about calculators? My understanding is they have to be simple and not scientific. Is that correct?
Yeah, for maths, yes.
Could I just mention about the pens as well? No, sorry to delay things. I had black and blue pens. I've had students bring green pens, and even one student with a pink pen once.
Yeah.
And I had to hand out a black.
That's a good point. Okay, yeah, I've put in here in this current slide, spare pens is on the list, and I need to specify black or blue in there. Okay, so if you're running the assessment, if your role is invigilator and you're in the assessment room, you obviously need the papers, a seating plan and an ID checklist. That is all on the EAF. You can just print out, if you want a hard copy, you can print out that particular page. Exam posters, a clock, spare pens. Good practice, obviously, to collect in obviously mobile phones, but also watches can have access to the internet, smart watches. So anything like that needs to be collected in. Centre number will be on your assessment pack. So I've just put it on there for reference because we wanted to get all the information in one place. Next one. The next few slides, I'm not going to go through over in detail because you'll have them when you get it, but it basically just lists what you would get in each assessment pack in terms of, what's what. So there's one for ESOL, there's one for English, there's one for maths. I will add in there a simple calculator because that's the detail we've missed. I've also included in here a list of reasonable adjustments. This is all taken from the qualification handbook from City and Guilds. So Rose, just coming back to your question about the dictionary. In each of these, it says the learners have access to dictionaries as a matter of course, mono or bilingual.
I couldn't believe it.
For ESOL, For
I couldn't
ESOL,
believe it.
there's no inherent requirement to write. So if they're doing reading, they don't have to write their answers as long as it's an auditable form. That's the key word there, and clearly authentic. For the writing, there's no inherent requirement to handwrite. Spin that one round. But again, they've got access to dictionaries as a matter of course. And then below this, all the list of reasonable adjustments that will be considered. And again, for speaking and listening, there's no requirement to read or write as long as they're captured as in an auditable form. It's lifted
I ask
straight from the
about-
guidance.
Sorry, can I please ask about the dictionaries? Who provides them? Do they have to get them themselves, or?
If they're bilingual, it would be, it needs to be paper dictionaries. They can't have the electronic. Do you want to?
Sorry, just to say, I mean, in terms of bilingual dictionaries, that would be something that you would be looking, well, I suppose ideally for learners to provide. However, you could be using DLS funds for that within your regions. So, you know, learning support funds. Because
Yeah.
I appreciate, obviously, that.
What if we can't get them?
Won't be able to do that.
What if we can't get them? Because like my students are Ukrainian. They said they don't know if they, you know, they could get hold of one of those here in Britain at the moment. Then they're at a disadvantage, aren't they?
They are at a disadvantage.
I've just done exams with Ukrainian students and I didn't hand out dictionaries because I thought we haven't practiced using them in class. They're not, it's not something they use these, they don't use paper dictionaries these days. So it was just, I just thought it was a diversion.
There is a dictionary question on the reading papers though. So
Yeah,
they
there
need
is.
an English dictionary for that.
Yeah.
When I was teaching, I just bought a few that were from the pound shop, £1 each. I don't know if they still do them, but I've just kept those in our.
I'm sure between us we could come up with some good dictionaries that can be used, obviously in class and then for exams. I think the important thing to remember with all of this, it goes back to what Jess was saying about what needs to be in that assessment room, is really getting those packs together in region, because we've had a lot of questions recently about that, and just simple things like actually having a clock as well, so that people know, you know, obviously how much time they've got, you know, making sure that that's all in place.
Even things like blue tack for putting up your notices. We used to, 10 years ago, we had a box that had everything in, all of the notices printed, the blue tack, the clock, the dictionaries.
I think what's happened,
need to get back to that.
I think what's happened since COVID as well is that there's been, obviously we've been focusing heavily, haven't we, on trying to get through COVID and through the sort of adjustments that we had with assessments, and doing things online. And it's, I feel like we've almost forgotten what we used to do and what needed to be in place. So it is about going back to that, really. Anyway, hand back to Jess.
Well, could I just mention about the dictionaries as well before you move on? I took one of my groups took entry 2 ESOL reading, and the word in the exam paper wasn't in the dictionary. So I found, so there was a bit of a panic on. I think it was a word like exhibitor or something.
Exhibitor and exhibition. Yes. Yeah.
So
I can't see who, sorry, I can't see who's talking. Oh, it's Kathy. Sorry, I seem to have lost all your faces. So yes, we're looking into that one. Rose was querying that one.
We went with the Collins School Dictionary or something like that, which actually has it in. So, but I sort of found it was better to sort of check to make sure beforehand that the dictionaries we're using had that word in it. We actually had to get some from the WEA branch office in Nottingham in the end to make sure that, you know, that didn't happen the next time. So
but if you're not getting your exams until just before, you can't do that.
Can't tell, can you?
And I was the invigilator and I didn't I didn't know, and we had exams running in different venues using different dictionaries. So one student had a dictionary with the word in it, but not the explanation. And the other one said it didn't even have the word in it, it just had exhibition. So,
so
they've had a different experience.
Yeah, and you can't disadvantage that student. So in that case, you know, you'd mark if they've looked up that word and in that dictionary, that's what it says, and you have to award that mark. You could flag it for EQA if they queried it. But if you get the IQA, for whoever's doing the IQA on that, if they sign that off, had a conversation about that, and flag it for EQA, I don't think anyone's going to argue that point, really.
I need
reason-
help feed clarifying. I'll come back to you on that because I don't know how to clarify it with the tutor, like how to record feedback ready for the IQA.
Okay, well, we'll have a conversation later on, I think. Again, we've got more information here on the reasonable adjustments. I'm just going to skim through it because we are. Are we okay? Are we not? Right. Okay. So this is the functional skills one. Again, just lifted from the handbook. So the different allowances there. Defined as non-written communication. It can include virtual communication. But all this is on the guidebook, the guidance handbook. And then again for maths as well, what's allowed. I've put this blue box on here just about requesting reasonable adjustments. There are links within the EAF which will take you to these full lists as well. And for levels 1 and 2, you have to formally request via the accreditation team using the EAF. So you're going to need to be providing evidence and medical certificates or whatever evidence is required for that particular adjustment. So be prepared for that and get tutors to be thinking about that early on in the course if they think that a learner's going to be needing additional adjustments.
Jess, does the tutor recommend, say someone would need more time? I had a student who physically couldn't sit in one position. They needed to be able to stand up and move around regularly. Does the tutor and the student talk about the time, or does Sitting Guilds give guidance on what's appropriate? Like how do you work out the time on those things?
It's not actually specified what the extra time is. It has to be a sort of agreed. If it's for entry level, it's a little easier because you're agreeing that with the tutor and the learner and whatever you think is reasonable. It has to be, you need to indicate it on the EAF just in case it gets EQA'd. But yeah, that's a conversation to have individually, I think, with the learner, the tutor, and then running it past the accreditation team. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Annabelle again. Okay. Hello again. So we've got a little line up here of people holding reminders. So we know the first one. Planning assessments from the start, including the mocks we've talked about throughout the day. Really important to read the assessment packs thoroughly. Everything that you need as an assessor is within the assessment pack. You can obviously, just as gone through within the slides, where sample papers can be located and as put passwords in, you will be able to see exactly what is in the assessment pack from that. So read it through thoroughly so that you're clear on that. Obviously ensure that you're assessment compliant. We've talked about storage, we've talked about the journey of the papers, etc. And transporting papers in a lockable case between venues. Where there's anything going back to some sort of discrepancies or people not sure about assessment decisions, again, that's the purpose of the IQA process and the EQA process. So it's about logging that as an assessor. The IQA will then log that within their report, and that report will then be seen by the EQA, because we can put that under the EQA's nose and say, actually, we weren't sure about this. This is the decision we made. What that shows is that we are doing things properly and we are applying, good quality assurance standards to what we're doing.
Okay, final breakout activity. We are probably going to give you about 15 minutes for this, if that's all right. This is a common one at the moment, because lots of you are setting up courses and you're finding that these courses that you're teaching online are attracting learners from outside of a region. So thinking again, back to step one, planning and preparation. You're going to need to arrange final assessments. What do you need to do? When do you need to do it by? Who do you need to get involved? So your scenario is you're delivering a level 1 ESOL speaking and listening course in region. It's being taught online and it's attracted learners from outside of the region. How are you going to do that? So based on going back to your quiz, going back to some of the information from the pre-conference slides and some of the discussions we've had, we'd like you to consider that in your groups and then feed back very briefly just about some considerations in terms of how you'll plan those assessments. So we're going to look at feedback, probably 2 minutes per group feedback at 3:50. Okay, so Jess is merrily putting you in your rooms.
I feel like I might be going a bit mad from all the information today. But did you just say that it has just changed, that we can do speaking and listening online for ESOL?
Remote assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is different from if I am setting up English functional skills online and I need to set up an exam in venue. So this is okay. I won't overcomplicate
skills,
it.
Speaking, listening and communication, and ESOL speaking and listening at all levels can be done through remote assessment.
Thank you.
Okay, off you go. Have fun. Sorry. It would help if I had the right slide set up. Okay, fantastic. So, remote assessment. We all now know the revelation. We should have had a drum roll really. That City and Guilds have said, despite having said that we couldn't for ESOL, that we can for ESOL, and also that we can do that for functional skills as well. So I've put in some information. We need to put a little bit more in because we put just level 1 in here. Obviously, you've got your conference pack that you can look at to view your options, but you've also got here links to the guidance in terms of how to conduct remote assessment. Lorraine has raised her hand so soon.
Just a quick question. So I prefer face-to-face exams. I think they're easier to conduct. But if you had a learner from another region and you couldn't arrange their speaking and listening exam in that region, could you do most of the class face-to-face and do that one remotely, or do they all have to be the same?
You can do a mix. And this is where 2 slides ahead, we will talk about the mix. But you can. Sorry, I'm not sharing the whole slide. Apologies. There we go. So, we've got some access to some guidance there. Jill, you've got your hand up, and then I'm going to.
I do. Is this the idea of a mixed one? I think unless you're the person who's running the session really knows what they're doing, I don't think it's fair. And I think that, you should, and also we talked about this in our group, that the student who can't make it, and you've all been online, so that's not, why don't you just stay online? I mean, it seems unfair for that student. I guess it's if somebody's moved away and has, I don't know, but I think you've got to be really, really careful about these hybrid things, because
absolutely
doesn't always work.
That thought, Jill, because it's about the learner's experience within all of this as well, not just about how we want to organise it. Maggie?
Just I'm hoping that this is that this would be correct, that if there was either one or two people that couldn't take a test with everybody else, that that they were going to go on to online, that they would all be doing it at the same time, not, oh, so and so wants to do it then and so can't do it till then, because it's practically impossible to organise. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah. So remote assessment guidance there, remote invigilation, which is different because that's for level 1, level 2 reading and writing functional skills, and level 1, level 2 maths. So there are very specific processes in place for that. Jackie Ruth, who's on the call, and I think some colleagues, Michaela and Lynn, I've seen on the call as well. Jill's obviously on the call, Jill Futcher. You know the wonders, the perils of remote invigilation. It requires a lot in terms of your learners needing very specific digital equipment and very specific and appropriate digital skills that need to be really checked thoroughly at the interview stage of a skills check. We've put in a link for the step-by-step guide here, but linking this to our next slide, with anything that you're wanting to do, whether it's mixed as a final assessment or if it's remote assessment, remote invigilation, think carefully about what is best in terms of that experience for your learners. And before you go ahead and do anything, what we've agreed as a team is that people book an appointment with Jess. Jess will then pull in a member of the accreditation administration team into that meeting as well, so that we can really go through how this is going to work and how it will look as well in terms of completing that EAF and, you know, basically how we're going to approach the assessments. What you've got to be mindful of as well, going back to the scenario that you were looking at, where you've got learners undertaking assessments across the country, whilst it can be done, you need to make sure that people are doing different topics, if that's needed, that different topics have been chosen, if they're sitting assessments at different times, because otherwise you have got a set of learners who are sitting something at a particular time, and then another set of learners who are going to do something at another time, and actually it could be the same topic, which means, well, what stops one of those learners ringing the other learner and saying, oh, question 3 is such and such? We've got to make sure things are done as they should be in terms of the assessments. We've got to make sure that your invigilators, your interlocutors are briefed and trained and are in place. That presents a lot of problems. If you are teaching online, say you're teaching, I'll give the example that Rose has given of ESOL reading, level 1 online, and then people are sitting exams across the country. You need invigilators for that. You don't need interlocutors, but you need invigilators. They need to be fully briefed, they need to be in place, you need appropriate venues, you need to make sure that the storage for the papers, the assessments and the transport is secure and that it's all in place. There are a lot of things to think about. And what I want to sort of stress to people is that all of the above is the responsibility of the person who set that course up. So the owner of the course. So I hope I've just answered that, Julia. The person who set it up, because it's not for the tutor to try and work all this out, and it's not for other regions to just be told, oh, I've got this learner, can you sort this and this out for them? It's got to obviously be done collaboratively, but the ownership is with the person who set the course up. And as I say, we will happily have those conversations with people about how to approach that and what's the best way forward. But it is really important that we're thinking about what is best for the learners here.
I would just like to say thank you to all of the colleagues that are on the call who are supporting me with 7 people in 6 venues with 6 different invigilators. And if any course organisers are thinking of delivering online and then organising the exam in venue, it is so time consuming, and I'm doing it in my region. I'm getting 1 student's funding because all the other students' funding is going to go to the other regions, and I just want them to achieve.
Yeah.
But it feels so fraught that I wish that I hadn't started it all, really, because if something just goes wrong at the end and they don't achieve because they can't get to the venue, or I've made a mistake on, you know, a date or a time, or, you know, something goes wrong, it feels like a very fragile house of cards. And I've tested everybody's patience. So thank you, accreditation team. Thank you, Jess and Annabelle, and thank you, other colleagues, for invigilating.
Ultimately, we want to support whatever it is that you need to do, but I think it's just one of those where, again, I think some of this stems from how things have changed and moved since COVID. So that possibility of having a range of learners all online learning, it was there before COVID, but we weren't necessarily exploiting it, were we, or utilising it to its sort of fullest potential. Now that we are, I think we've started perhaps to make an assumption that, oh, well, they can be assessed, but it's like, okay, going back to step 1, planning. How are they going to be assessed? How are you going to manage that? Because it's an awful amount of work to put in place. And some, you know, lend themselves more readily than others. So anyone who's doing speaking and listening, obviously you've got remote assessment options there. That lends itself quite neatly to that. You've got to obviously find interlocutors to do that, but it's where you've got a situation where actually you're looking to deliver the assessment face to face, and you've got a geographic spread. So just really to think that through. I don't know if any of the groups wanted to feed back anything. We've got a few minutes for people to just feed back anything specific about the conversations that they had. But we need to sort of move on really to look for the end by about, I'd say, 4:10. So Lorraine, you've got your hand up.
Oh, it wasn't for feeding back, sorry. I just wanted to be clear on something. So if I have an exam in a venue, say, I don't know, entry reading, and one student doesn't turn up because they're sick that day or teacher strike or whatever, and then they say, oh, I can come in the next day to do it, do I have to give them a different exam?
You do.
Or the same one?
No.
Because the turnaround on that is, what would that be?
Yeah, you wouldn't be doing it the next day.
At least 2 weeks, I was told. I've been in that recently, because it all needs to be reordered and
I mean, I'm talking about entry level, not ones directly from City and Guilds that we could print in region, but it's obviously you'd have to change your topic.
You'd have to change your topic. You'd need to let the accreditation team know as soon as possible and see what the turnaround for that could be. But you wouldn't necessarily be doing it the next day. Things do happen. People miss things, don't they? They're sick, their children are sick, things happen. I think what we've got to acknowledge as well is that we do have, when we look at the amount of assessments that are booked that people don't turn up for where it's not sickness, there's a huge volume there. And actually we've got to get that message across to learners that obviously we need them to turn up for that assessment. Now I know there could be a myriad of reasons why they don't, but it's really important that they appreciate obviously the importance of that, and as well for us as an organisation, we've got to look at the financial implications of that. We're spending a lot of money, hundreds, thousands of pounds, where learners simply aren't turning up for things, and then are coming back a couple of weeks later and saying, oh, can I do my exam? We've got to start to get that message across as well, I think. Right, Elizabeth, Lucy, and then Athena, please.
I was just saying, when you're thinking about dividing up into different online or in venue, certainly for the discussion, you've got to make a group, haven't you, for at least 3 people. So you can't just do one person online. You need to invite other students, and then you might be having students in venue and doing one topic and doing online on another topic. So it just gets very messy, doesn't it?
It does. It gets very messy very quickly. Lucy?
Hi, my question really was mainly about the data and the KPIs, and I wondered what your views are on why there's a huge difference between the non-accredited and the accredited. Is it due to the student confidence? You know, they're for English, for instance, a non-accredited 94% pass rate, but then when they do an accredited course, it's 74, and achievement goes all the way down to 46. And I wondered, I definitely hope that what's going on today is going to help improve those. But what kind of things have been affecting that? Because I wonder, I'm trying to consider learning, you know, this huge NHS 5 steps to wellbeing, and maybe there's something that we can run alongside EME to help with their confidence. And I know that's what the first steps are meant to do, but something else to help them manage their stress levels and their anxieties around exams and things. Maybe that might help. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's where mocks and lots of opportunities to do chunks of assessment are good in terms of building that confidence. And I would say that we do hear sometimes that learners aren't having mocks, that mocks aren't taking place, and that's poor practice. That's poor practice in terms of formative assessment, obviously, and poor practice for the learners in terms of being ready and feeling confident. So we need to make sure that's in place. It can be a myriad of things, but I think the rigor behind the accredited, as opposed to some of the issues that we're sort of facing and seeing with RAPA, is possibly another reason behind it as well, if I'm perfectly honest. So, but we do need to make sure that we are using those non-accredited courses as well to then allow people to step on to something accredited. We're still very lucky that we can do that with our funding. You know, so we need to utilise it effectively.
And that is the pathway that you've been using. So I'm assuming if someone's going on a non-accredited, seeing it done, getting them confident, then the reflection should be that accredited is mirroring the non-accredited. So
it should, but it's not.
It's not. Okay.
It's not. Athena and then Chadney, and then will. That's okay, Lucy, and then we'll move to the next part, which is all about
Annabelle, I would like to get some updates about the 10-day window gap before the actual exam registration and after. So before it was like, when tutors registered their learners for their exams and they set dates, there was a 10-day window gap. So 10 days before that date and 10 days after that date, if the learners, if they had to rearrange for exams, not just one person, but the whole group, they didn't need to re-register with City and Guilds.
No,
they were allowed.
That's if it's a whole group.
Yes, whole group.
Yeah.
So does this still apply?
I think it does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. We can double check it for you, but I'm pretty sure that still applies.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Chadney.
I've got 3 quick questions. First one, I read somewhere that it was 3 terms to get them, 3 terms at pre-entry to get them to the next level. As you know, pre-entry, their starting block could be anything, you know, from absolute no formal education to, you know, that they have some. So how flexible is that?
It can, well, it can be flexible depending on the fact that you're able to show that those learners, if they're doing something non-accredited, each time they're enrolling on the next bit of non-accredited, that they are working to different learning outcomes, and that you can really evidence that. Because what we've had in the past is a bit of a revolving door where people have just been doing that forever and ever and ever, and actually they could have progressed on to the next step. But we've kept them all there and they've enjoyed being in that group, which actually, it's not a nasty thing, is it, to do any of that? But our funding simply doesn't allow that. And ultimately, you'd argue that if the learner can progress and get a certificate that's going to support them, then you'd want them to do that.
What we do, Annabelle, what we do is we do things like creative reading or creative writing as a small community learning course, or develop your communication skills, because we've worked out, or even employability if they're going to do a job type topic in the exam, because we've found gaps. So we wrap around a community learning to do the intervention as a whole group.
Yeah,
but that works certainly for the writing. It's worked.
This is where going back to the start of the day when I said that we're going to conduct a review of our pathways. So the non-accredited in particular, and some of those models, Yaz, will be really useful to have a conversation about, so that people can then share those models as well. We can look at what's going on with all of those.
Yeah, because we've got Multiply, and at the moment you can use that in any way you want, and it's just a free, you know, another free course that you can use to wrap around some of even the math particularly.
Okay. I'm noticing that there's a couple of people who have been putting in that they need to, they're leaving and things. When people do leave, and I'm hoping that you're all going to stay until 4:30, you will be prompted to complete a survey. So that's an evaluation survey. So please do that. It's obviously taken us a lot of time and energy and effort, and it will probably take you 2 minutes to complete the survey. So we'd really appreciate that feedback. Jackie, and then I'm going to need to move us on, I think.
Hi, thank you. I think Emma's gone now, but she's asked me to raise something. So there was concerns in our group over tutors assessing their own students' final exams in the entry levels.
Okay, that's not a problem to do that. It shouldn't be a concern because we can do that. Best practice would be that we had, you know, a massive pool of assessors, and we could pick who was going to assess for each tutor, but we don't have that, and City Guilds are perfectly fine with us basically allowing our tutors for entry levels to assess. It's not a problem.
Thank you. Can the interlocutor be the assessor for all levels if they assess the following day? Is there a time constraint, or can they assess just not at the time of the assessment?
Yeah, they can't do it at the same time. I'm not sure if you're picking up what Jess was saying. They can't do it at the same time, but they can do it afterwards. That's fine.
Right. Okie dokie. And the invigilator. So is an invigilator required for level 1 and level 2 speaking and listening, or is it's an
interlocutor. Sorry.
Interlocutor. Yeah,
I was going in my mind towards reading. Sorry. Yes, it's an interlocutor.
Right. Super. Thank you.
Please say to Irma and to Rose, hang on a minute, say to Irma, go back and look at those pre-conference slides. All the answers are there.
I have, but I'm just worried about the standard across the WEA because I am. I just let Jackie talk. I didn't want to interrupt her. But I was saying to my obviously superiors that I'm worried about the standard within the WEA, because certain regions seem to be doing one thing, and we were told by our previous lead IQA that the tutors are not allowed to assess their own students' work. It's not the best practice, and it's even
they are allowed. If you can in your region work it so that they don't, that's absolutely fine. It is fantastic practice. But the reality is that most regions won't be able to do that, and actually it's not a requirement. So if you want to carry that on in region, you can.
Yeah, we can, Annabelle, because we have.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's really good. That's really good.
We will have that EME expertise across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, quick one from Rose, and then I really do need to move us on.
It was just that it did keep popping up in the chat that there was this, you have to wait 24 hours before you assess. I'd never heard that before. If the tutor is the assessor, they can just get home and do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so on to internal and external monitoring. So we've talked about IQAs and what IQAs need to do, and we're going to come back to that final piece in a moment. We do have audits. We've got internal audits, which I referred to earlier. We're looking at these sort of subject deep dives. Some of you will have been involved in recent internal quality reviews. The new quality leads, no doubt, will have activities that they are setting up to actually go in and audit and check on different activities. And ourselves as a team look to do that. And we also have city and guilds audits. Now, Midlands and South East to date have been the lucky ones that got picked for a City and Guilds audit. Now, this is an exam audit where an auditor goes in and basically observes the conduct of the exam. So they're very much looking at the invigilator and what goes on there. We've had 2. We're due another one for maths. It was scheduled for the Northwest, but City and Guilds pulled out. So be aware. And as I said earlier, we will be sending out the invigilator PowerPoint to people. So that is quite useful. It's a very useful document in terms of that preparation for that. We've been through 2 now. Colleagues, I don't know if they're on the call, Sam Johnson, and in terms of Midlands, Lisa Havard, have all had experience of these audits. So colleagues, as and when something happens, people can obviously share their experiences. And we've talked about actually within the EME network, inviting Sam and Lisa to sort of share their experiences of that. The other thing we have are annual EQA visits. These are conducted remotely at the moment by our EQA. He comes into the Leeds office and he spends about 2 or 3 days going through everything. He will, however, though, at various points say he would like to go and visit a region, or he would like to go and see online basically what's happening in one of the classes. He's completely entitled to do so, and he's done that in the past. And I think Imogen, who may be on the call, he came and visited one of your classes before, I believe. In terms of monitoring, really important reminder, we have got policies in place around malpractice or maladministration. We have a duty to report any incidents that occur, whether it be learner malpractice, assessor malpractice, IQA malpractice, or indeed maladministration. We have to follow that policy, and I will actually send that out to people after this as well. So that's just a little flavour really of some of the internal and external monitoring that goes on. Linking then to, linking back, sorry, to just sort of summing up some things around final assessment. talked a lot about starting from the beginning of the course in terms of your planning. So we've got a little bit of a checklist there for people. We've gone through, I believe, all of the things on that checklist.
Internally marked exam papers after they have been marked and uploaded to Canvas. So the process there is
Struggling to hear you, Jess.
Can you not hear me?
Right, that's better.
No, you're cutting out quite a lot.
Sorry. So the question I had was about exam papers after they've been marked and stored onto Canvas. So the process should be that they are then sent to the regional office for archiving. Now we're waiting to get confirmation on whether, well, first of all, what the length of time is, because there's been some disagreement between whether it's 5 years or 7 years. But the other thing we need to know is, if we've scanned them to Canvas, does that then negate the need to store those hard copies? So for now, if you could just carry on sending them to the regional office and they'll store them for you. So just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, so end of course moderation. So going back to IQA activities, for non-accredited courses, obviously we're following the WEA RAPA guidance for how we conduct that moderation and record that achievement. For internally marked accredited courses, the IQA is monitoring the work of the assessors, and they're doing that, as we spoke earlier, before, during and after the course. So they're looking at sampling, and then at the end of the course, it's end of course moderation. So this is where the assessment decisions of assessors are checked by the IQA so that achievement can then confidently be claimed. So if there are any discrepancies, as we said before, they're flagged by the assessor, they're flagged or confirmed or dealt with by the IQA, or if not, they're flagged by the IQA, and then we basically present that to our EQA, who's our external quality assurer. And the feedback is given to the assessor by the IQA as part of this activity. Now we have a beautiful slide that Jess has put lovely little stars on. It looks very lovely in terms of how that process works. We are going to leave that with you to have a look through when you get that. I hope you get to print it in colour or view it in colour. Obviously we'll email out these slides, but it just shows that journey, the journey of the EAF in terms of the basically the assessor completing what they need to do, and then the IQA completing what they need to do, because they need to complete the results and that final part of the results on the EAF and get that to the accreditation team so that the certification can be claimed. So that's a really important part of that process, and it's something that people sometimes forget.
Can I just ask a quick question about the resits at that point, Annabelle? I always get confused about when I'm supposed to send the moderation form back. Is it after the first set of exams or after the resits? Or is it two separate forms, or is it in the same form?
Two separate, really. You'd send it back to say what's happened, and then you'd be sending out
another one,
a renewed form for your resits.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Can I also,
right,
just,
where are we?
can I also just say about sharing it with invigilators? Invigilators do well to see the EAF. It's got candidate numbers on to check. It's got the levels that they can check. They've got the correct paper. It's got the seating plan on. And again, if you are like me battling with 6 invigilators for the same EAF, the form is designed for, you know, one exam in one place. But you can talk to accreditation team. They can give some guidance on how to handle that if you can't avoid it, though my advice is avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, so again, it's about booking that appointment, and then we can have that conversation. So the EQA visits mainly focus on 4 areas for us, for City and Guilds, although increasingly some of the things around management systems and around resources, our EQA doesn't ask so much about. He will do. He's more interested in seeing, obviously, the learners' work, the assessors' work, and obviously what's been happening with the IQA. But there's a whole range of areas that they will speak to us about during their visits, ranging from initial assessment through to how our team is structured, through to the physical resources that we're working in, how the assessment's planned, CPD, sampling, national moderation, national standardisation, should I say, regional standardisation, etc. The list goes on. They're expecting to see an update on actions taken since the last visit. They're expecting to see that learner work's been IQA'd. Assessor work has been IQA'd, I should really say. That staff qualifications are appropriate, that they're up to date, that there's CPD logged. So I would hope that people will be putting today on their CPD log in terms of EME. Obviously that learners are registered, standardisation's in place, IQA sampling and moderation is conducted, that policies, as I mentioned earlier, around malpractice, appeals, etc., are all communicated and updated, and that resources to support delivery are up to date. Now, prior to the visit, we will ask via your quality lead for those following things back, because we need those to be then uploaded so that the EQA can come in and basically look at what he needs to do. He conducts it via his laptop, but he chooses to come into the leads office so that if he's got any questions, he can speak to us about that. So there's a list there of all the things that you need, and these are all things that we've been talking about today. So, 3 minutes to go. I'm determined that we finish on time and that I don't keep you late. So, summing up, little list, plan. Have we said that already? I think we have. Plan. Be clear about the structure of EME, funding roles and responsibilities. Read the EAF instructions. We've got to follow the assessment guidance. We've got to make sure that learners are aware of protocols around that. We need to make sure that any of the guidance that's been put onto Canvas has been put on there for a reason. It's not because we thought, oh, that would be fun to just put a little document on there. It's there for a reason. Please read it. And obviously now we're really lucky. We've got brilliant quality improvement and assurance leads in place and coming to all regions. So they're the perfect person to sort of raise your initial queries with, and then we can basically collate those, answer those, and hopefully be a bit more sort of efficient in the way that we're working as well, because at the moment we are pretty much just troubleshooting and firefighting, which is not the way to go. We're going to send out the conference slides, invigilator training, interlocutor training as well, and exam compliance. We've got new intranet pages because we have a new intranet apparently. So we are going to be placing updated documents on there. So that will be the sort of one-stop shop for policies. Anything that the tutor or the IQA needs will remain on Canvas. City and Guilds have offered to do some regional sessions. So we're looking at arranging them and we'll be in touch with regions about that. But please visit their website and sign up for updates. They've got lots of different webinars and updates going on all the time. So that's a really useful resource. We've got a relationship with the ETF and we're exploring some CPD with them. The ETF, the Education Training Foundation, have a lot of free training, free CPD modules, really good stuff. So that's one to look out for as well. And then finally, NATECLA, who are the professional body for ESOL tutors in particular. We are securing organisational membership from September, and we will have access then to free conferences and resources. I believe I've done it. Lisa, no. No, Lisa, no. Lisa.
I'm going to take you over at 4:30, Annabelle. I just
always do.
Apologies if I've missed the answer to this because I missed the middle bit of the session. I should be watching that on the video. But we're currently not scanning our exam papers and uploading them to Canvas. The hard copies, as far as I know, are all in the office. What should we do about that?
You need to get them onto Canvas so that we can then
How far back do we need to go?
EQA them. For all of the ones that you've conducted that haven't been seen by the EQA this year.
So when did
I can have a separate conversation with you on that, Lisa, don't worry.
If you would.
Yeah.
So I'm not even sure. I know we've got a photocopy. I'm not even sure whether it's a scanner. I assume it is.
I'll have a separate conversation with you on that. Elizabeth, and then I've just got a couple of things I want to mention before we go. Elizabeth, you're muted.
I need to clarify in my head the role of the assessor, the role of invigilator, the role of interlocutor. Basically, I arrive at exam premises half an hour early. I move tables and chairs. If the invigilator isn't there, I put up the posters. I do all those kind of jobs. And now you're saying I need to read the exam script, check the words, check them in dictionaries. There's quite a lot of pre-exam preparation. I allowed half an hour, probably wasn't enough. And now post-exam, I'm not quite sure who's doing the scanning and the uploading and all that sort of thing. So it seems there's quite a bit of extra work in there. Are you going to put in our contracts, if you like?
It shouldn't all be falling to you, Elizabeth, to do that. That's the bottom line. You know, exams shouldn't be organised and the tutor is just left to deal with it. There's got to be a team approach to all of that. So, I mean, that's something that we can have a discussion. I believe, are you now in South East, Elizabeth? Yes, so that's something that Amanda and I can have a conversation about, and Amanda can come back to you about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mind doing it, but you know, obviously it needs to be
absolutely. Yeah, you need to. Absolutely. It needs to be planned for and obviously paid.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you ever so much for all of your contributions and all of your commitment throughout the day for all of the activities. A big thanks to our facilitators. Thank you ever so much. Thanks to Jess. We hope you've found this informative and enjoyable. Please do complete the survey. When you leave the meeting, it will prompt you to complete the survey. It'll only take a few minutes and it'll be really helpful in supporting us for the development of future conferences. We're wanting to do this possibly twice a year. It might not be a full day, it might be half days. But thank you ever so much on behalf of myself and Jess. And we're only 3 minutes over, so, you know, I think pat on the back. If you've enjoyed it, tell your friends. If you didn't, don't tell your friends. And we'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.